What do you watch the Super Bowl for, the game or the ads? Well, we examine the advertising side of the Super Bowl with marketing expert Jim Karrh with Mangan Holcomb Partners and Karrh & Associates. All right, Jim, let's talk first about the cost of a Super Bowl ad this year. How much does one cost, and do you think it's a good value?
Well, the average cost for 30 seconds of time during the Super Bowl broadcast is about $3.5 million, which is another record. And that keeps going up year after year. That $3.5 million is only part of the total cost to a sponsor, though, of putting on Super Bowl ads, because you actually have to make the ads and all the time that's spent in the strategy and the work behind the scenes and fielding that thing out. So it's a huge investment. It's one that companies are continuing to make year after year. I don't know a year in the last 20 or more in which that average price has gone down. Now, it's a great value if you get something for your money. And different sponsors will define that in different ways, and that's changed over time too. I remember having a conversation a number of years ago with a friend who was in a corporate marketing department. His company had been a Super Bowl sponsor. And he said, you know, for us the value is not so much the ad that's on there, but the fact that we get a lot of tickets to the game and to the pregame parties and the like, which we can then give out to some of our best customers or our distributors, partners, best salespeople and the like. And so actually whatever they got from the ad itself with consumers was kind of gravy. But now there's a lot more value that can happen at the consumer level, and a lot of it is due to social media.
Well, you mentioned social media, and we've seen so many Super Bowl ads, particularly this year, that have come out early and been pushed through social media channels, and they've gone viral. Is this a trend that was pretty predictable?
Yes, and in fact, that's where a lot of the leading-edge marketers have gone. And you look at the progression just in the past few years, Roby. What has happened is first you try to get your ads there, and you hope that you're generating some discussion on the Monday after the game around the water cooler. And then you're hoping that the media will pick up on some of these, and you'll get an extension of the effect and the conversation and buzz around your ad. Then it was, oh, let's put our ads on the web and try to create some viral discussion. Again, a lot of it after the fact. But there are a lot of risks that are there for the advertiser. The first is that the game itself will be a dud, and people won't be watching so much. This year we have a really good matchup. I suspect the only way it could have been a better matchup is if the Denver Broncos had been in the Super Bowl and Tim Tebow had been quarterback. We would have had a pregame build-up unlike any other. But let's take some of the guesswork out of this and go ahead and build the story ahead of time. And a lot of people want to know what's going to be on and which ads that they want to pay attention to. So not just after the fact, but let's do more before the broadcast, and that way it doesn't really matter if the game is a blowout or if you don't get the placement within the game exactly where you'd want it to be.
And there's still a smaller audience that's going to watch it through social media than is actually going to watch it during the viewership of the Super Bowl.
Correct. But you're also looking at who your target is for a particular product or service that you have, and you really want to connect with them and the people who influence them. So yes, this is the biggest media event of the year. It far surpasses the Oscars or anything else that represents a media gathering point for most of America. And so that's why you see so many mass market types of products and brands, consumer packaged goods, cars, things like that as well. But the smart marketers are also looking at who is it that is going to be our primary target. And in many cases, they are those people who are heavier users of social media. And so that makes a lot of sense for them to do something that's a campaign where the Super Bowl ad is only part of the picture. And the campaign is really about getting some return virally.
One of the things that we know from reading some of the trade publications and business journals is that there's been an emphasis on focus groups and on some research on the front end for some of these commercials. Kind of explain to our audience why there's more of that this year. Perhaps it's based on a debacle from last year.
There is a lot of return available to you by having a Super Bowl advertising campaign, but there's a lot of risk. It can risk that you're simply ineffective. There's also the risk that you can do the wrong thing and shoot yourself in the foot. On the former, I read a Wall Street Journal report that Hyundai, in putting out one of their ad executions for the Super Bowl, went through 2 rounds of focus groups. And in their first round, they discovered that one of the actors involved in the ad, their target audience, didn't like him. And they were distracted by him, and they missed out on the message that Hyundai was trying to get across in the ad. And so they made a substitution, then they tested the final product again so they didn't get it wrong. And to your second point, I remember last year where Groupon, again paying millions of dollars to get themselves on the big stage of the Super Bowl, had a rather clumsy reference to Tibet in their ad, which wound up creating a lot of controversy. They got spread through Twitter and Facebook very quickly. A lot of apologies, a lot of backtracking. They wound up spending millions of dollars to harm their own reputation. So a number of smarter companies are looking at this, and not only do they want to use the power of viral, but they're willing to put in that extra 1% or 2% effort to test what they're doing pretty carefully through focus groups, eye tracking, and a number of other modern techniques to make sure they don't get this thing wrong.
Now, we've noted that about 20 out of 36 Super Bowl ads were released early this year. Let's talk about a couple of them. Let's begin with the one that's generated the most buzz kind of ahead of schedule. That's the Honda CR-V ad with Matthew Broderick. He's reprising his Ferris Bueller role. Give us your critique.
And I have to say, I liked it just personally as a viewer. I'm also was a fan of the movie, and it's one of those movies that goes back where there are certain lines like Bueller that are repeated a lot, especially for those of us, I'd say maybe over the age of 30, who've seen that a lot. This was, I thought, a nicely crafted commercial in the fact that Matthew Broderick, in his performance, wasn't really over the top. I mean, he can still really pull off that kind of boyish innocence and the way that he spoke to the camera. It was very familiar to people who were fans of the movie. It also was smart, I think, in terms of the market for the Honda CR-V and targeting that particular age demographic of people who would immediately relate to that, and it's the kind of thing that will get passed along and has been passed along in the days and a couple of weeks prior to the Super Bowl. So I thought they took a nice concept and executed it very well.
Another nostalgic ad involves comedian Jerry Seinfeld. He's hawking a car for Acura, I think. Again, just another ad that plays on a lot of familiar storylines from people in a particular generation, correct?
Correct, and some of the gags in that particular ad were back toward the show. The Soup Nazi showed up again in that ad, as I recall. And so you had some celebrity power that came in. Jay Leno was the person who was also trying to get the first model of this car to hit the market. You have to go back and be a Seinfeld fan and get some of his humor in order, I think, for that ad to really appeal. In fact, we saw a lot of celebrity use during the Super Bowl in lots of different ways, all the way from sports celebrities to some iconic celebrities like Clint Eastwood and Elton John to folks like Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno as well.
Well, and before we turn to celebrity appeal, one more thing about cars and the fact that we saw so many of these car ads. Auto manufacturing's made a really big rebound lately. Car sales have made a big recovery. So it's really not that big of a surprise that this momentum has kind of catapulted into the Super Bowl, is it?
I look at the Super Bowl as a neat snapshot in a couple of ways this time of year. One, I think it gives us a look at where the pop culture and the celebrity culture are at this time every year. And the other is it's a sense of optimism or kind of a leading indicator of where companies in different product and service lines think their business is going to go. As you mentioned earlier, there's a big investment and some risk that's involved in this. And so if a company is going to put millions of dollars and a lot of reputation on the line, they must think that they're in a position where this can really help their business in some measurable ways over the coming year. So I was struck, Roby, by we didn't see a lot of movie ads this year. It had been a disappointing 2011 for box office receipts and movie revenues, and maybe this is a reflection of that. None of the studios thought that they had anything in the offering that was worth the investment in the Super Bowl advertising. But we did see a lot of automobile ads, maybe 5 or 6 different makes of car ads. And we also saw, I was struck by the fact that Century 21 had several different executions on here. They put a lot of money into this, and it's a sign of life for residential real estate that we haven't seen in some time.
All right, let's talk about one of those Century 21 ads, the one with Deion Sanders, Donald Trump, and Apollo Ono. It's a good use of humor and probably a pretty good use of celebrity, too.
I thought so. The strategy here was to show the Century 21 agent as having some superpowers. The whole message is about them being bolder and stronger and faster. Essentially, what Century 21 is trying to do here is, one, get a sense that things are happening in residential real estate, and they are in much of the country. We still have pockets of things that may be bad for some time, but when they look at the national picture, obviously they think that they can push that market forward a bit. The other thing is that putting their agent in that position against more financial negotiating acumen than Donald Trump, for example, and more star power than Deion and faster than Apollo Ono, is they're also making the case of don't try to do this yourself, that we're worth more to go through an agent and pay that commission than would be the case of a for sale by owner, which has been their greatest competition in recent years.